There are lots of survival games out there, but which ones are the best? Which one will make you feel that you really need to survive? And which one is worth every penny? Today in this video, we'll highlight some of the best survival games that you must play if you want to experience that feeling. We have a lot to talk about, so let's get started. And first up, we have Dredge. And yeah, okay, on paper, this looks like a chill fishing game, right? Nice little boat, little shop runs, little upgrades, maybe a relaxing soundtrack while you catch some weird fish and sell them for parts. Then the game starts creeping the knife in. The water gets wrong, the fog gets wrong. Your little fishing routine turns into this anxious loop where you are always asking yourself whether you should push a little farther or just get your ass back to port before something notices you. That slow burn dread is the whole reason Dredge works. It understands that horror is often more effective when it sits quietly in the corner and waits for you to get comfortable. It launched in 2023 and still gets treated like one of the smartest genre blends in years, which is exactly what it deserves. I mean, there are games that try to be cozy and creepy at the same time and just end up muddled. Dredge is not muddled. It knows precisely when to relax you and when to ruin your night. That balance is the trick, and this thing nails it. If you like survival games that feel a little cursed in the best possible way, this is a must-play. Next on the list, it's Pacific Drive. You know, this game is probably the most stressful driving game that doesn't involve a single police chase. Remember when survival games were just about not starving? Yes, forget all of that now, because here, you are trapped in the Olympic exclusion zone. This time, a bizarre sci-fi wasteland, and your only lifeline is a beat-up station wagon. The first hour is incredibly stressful. The car is falling apart, the tires are flat, the engine is smoking, and weird anomalies are tearing up the ground around you. You have to manually start the car, manually put it in drive, manually turn on the wipers while fleeing for your life. It is such a tactile, involved experience. The relationship you build with this garbage car is instant. You are obsessed with fixing it, upgrading it, and keeping it running, because if the car dies, you die. It is a completely unique gameplay loop. Another one we have here is Enshrouded. This game combines incredible voxel-based building with some legit action RPG combat and exploration. You wake up in a world consumed by this deadly fog called the Shroud, which corrupts everything it touches. You can only survive in the Shroud for a limited time, which makes exploring it feel like a tense, ticking clock. But honestly, the absolute standout feature here is the building system. Because it's voxel-based, you can carve out bases literally anywhere, into the side of a mountain, underground, or floating in the sky. The detail you can put into your structures is mind-blowing. As a solo player, you aren't penalized. The combat scaling is fair, and unlocking the NPC crafters gives your base a lived-in feel. It's got elements of Zelda in its exploration and puzzles, combined with a Valheim-style progression loop. If you ask me, it's one of the most ambitious survival games to come out recently, and it's out right now on PC. And coming in next, it is Abiotic Factor. So imagine playing a survival crafting game set entirely inside the Black Mesa facility from Half-Life during a massive containment breach. You play as a bunch of nerdy scientists trapped underground, trying to survive multi-dimensional aliens and military kill squads. The vibe is so distinctly 90s PC gaming, and honestly, I like it. You aren't some hardened survivor. You're a PhD who has to duct tape a knife to a pipe just to defend yourself. You build bases in break rooms, scavenge office supplies, and literally cook up alien meat in the cafeteria microwaves. While it is pushed as a co-op game, playing it single player is a genuinely terrifying and immersive experience. You have to be super methodical, setting up traps and using the environment to outsmart enemies. The map design is intricate. Full of shortcuts and locked sectors you slowly open up. It's a breath of fresh air in a genre that usually just drops you in a forest, and it's currently available on almost every platform. Now moving on, we have This War of Mine, and this one is brutal in a completely different way. There is no power fantasy here, no "I found a great gun, now I am a god" nonsense. You are just trying to keep regular people alive in a war zone. And the game keeps making that harder by forcing you to make choices that feel rotten no matter what you do. Do you steal from someone who is probably just as desperate as you are? Do you leave medicine behind because carrying food matters more tonight? Do you send somebody out and risk them because the other option is everyone starving? That is the whole game, and it is why it hits so hard. It is survival as a moral pressure cooker, not a checklist. The fact that 11-Bit Studios is now working on a full remake says everything about the original's legacy, because the themes are still being treated as relevant and worth revisiting. I do not think many games deserve that kind of conversation, but this one absolutely does. It is uncomfortable on purpose. It is supposed to be. And if a survival game can make you sit there and genuinely think about what kind of person you are, well, that is not something you forget. So next up, it's V Rising. Alright, I have put embarrassing hours into this one. You are a vampire, you wake up in a crumbling world, and you have to build a castle, hunt for blood, and survive the daylight. The isometric viewpoint is crucial here because the combat is real-time and action-focused, almost like a top-down Diablo, but with way more weight. Every weapon has a different moveset, and you have to aim your spells and dashes manually. It is so satisfying to land a perfect spear throw or turn into a wolf to escape a losing fight. And the castle building is legitimately great. You can design a whole gothic fortress with coffins, gardens for blood, and servant coffins to raise undead minions. The game launched out of early access in 2024, and it is fully cooked now with a complete campaign, a bunch of endgame bosses, and full PvP servers if you want to raid other people's castles. I mostly played solo, and it still felt huge. The progression from a weak little bat that hides from the sun to a walking death machine with a full castle and an army is one of the best power curves I have seen in years. Even the soundtrack slaps. If you ever wanted a proper vampire simulator that actually lets you feel like Dracula, this is it. Just make sure you have friends, because the boss fights get brutal alone. So next up we have Timberborn. Beavers. You build a colony of beavers, and the main enemy is not predators or starvation, it's water physics. Timberborn is a city builder where every decision you make revolves around managing rivers, building dams, creating reservoirs, and surviving droughts that last for days. The water simulation is genuinely impressive. You can build something like canals, floodgates, levees, and watch how the flow changes across the map. And the beavers themselves are adorable little weirdos who will wear tiny hats if you let them. The game is already out of its early access last March of this year, and the developers have been still pushing regular updates, and it's more polished now compared back then. The recent updates even added zip lines, hyperloops, multi-layer buildings, and a bunch of quality of life improvements. My only real complaint is the district system, which limits how far your beavers can travel and forces you to split your colony into separate zones. It's realistic, sure, but it gets frustrating when you're trying to build a mega dam across the whole map. Still, if you've ever looked at a river and thought, I could control that, this game will eat your weekend, and then Monday, and then Tuesday. So you better watch your back. So next on the list, it's Frostpunk 2. The first game was already one of the meanest, smartest survival city builders ever made, but the sequel shifts the pressure in a way I really appreciate. It is not just about freezing people to death less slowly than the weather wants to. Now it is about politics, factions, ideology, and the ugly little compromises that show up when a city gets too big to be managed by one decent human being. I love that. It keeps the survival tension, but it makes the survival social, which is a much nastier problem. The game launched on PC in 2024, and by this year it was already getting a roadmap of new content, free updates, which tells you the thing has plenty of life left in it. What I think some people bounced off at first was the fact that it is less of a pure freeze the night away sequel, and more of a watch civilization tear itself apart while you juggle competing interests sequel. Fair enough, that is a shift. But it is also the point. Frostpunk 2 does not want you to just survive, it wants you to govern while everything falls apart around you. That is a much more uncomfortable fantasy, and for me that makes it more interesting, not less. And next on the list we have Rimworld. I mean, come on, this thing is a disaster machine in the best possible way. The whole game is basically a story generator that looks at your colonists, your resources, your defenses, and then quietly asks, how badly do you want this to go wrong? And the answer is always, very badly. That is why it never gets old. One colony becomes a triumph, the next becomes a clown car of infection, betrayal, mental breaks, fire, toxic fallout, and whatever other nonsense the storyteller decides to throw at you. Rimworld has been around long enough now that it is basically a permanent resident of the survival conversation, and it still keeps evolving. The new Odyssey expansion drove a big spike in attention last year, with new space travel, new biomes, and a bunch of frankly unhinged animals like therapy pandas and hive queens, which sounds fake until you remember what game this is. The beauty of Rimworld is that even when it adds more systems, it never loses the core joke, which is that survival is hard and humans are extremely stupid under pressure. That is not a bug. That is the game. If you want a survival experience that can go from wholesome to catastrophic in about 4 seconds, this is one of the all-time greats. Coming in next, let's talk about Project Zomboid. This game is so committed to survival simulation that it sometimes feels less like a game and more like a very detailed warning from the universe. You do not just have to avoid zombies, you have to manage noise, fatigue, injuries, boredom, mood, weather, inventory, and the creeping reality that one small mistake can end your entire run. And I love it for that. It is one of those games where your first few hours are basically a series of humbling experiences, and then somehow that turns into the fun. The project has been in active development for a long time, but that slow burn is part of its identity now, and Build 42 has been rolling through unstable beta with animals, crafting changes, and a whole pile of new systems. That means the game is still very much alive and still evolving, which is wild for something that already feels this dense. What I respect most is that it never pretends apocalypse survival should be heroic. It is clumsy, panicked, repetitive, and often hilarious in the worst possible way. You are not a hero in Project Zomboid. You are a person who forgot to shut a window and now has 10 problems. That honesty is why it rules. Coming in next, it's The Forest. The Forest is one of those games that define survival horror for a generation. The premise is simple. You crash land on a remote island, and you quickly realize you're not alone. The locals are cannibals, and they are smart. They watch you, they test your defenses, and they learn your patterns. That AI is the secret sauce. Enemies don't just mindlessly attack, they observe and adapt, which makes every encounter feel genuinely unpredictable. The cave exploration is terrifying, the base building is satisfying, and the story, once you piece it together, is surprisingly good. The game sold over 5 million copies and was in early access for years before its full release in 2018. But here's the wild part. At the Game Awards 2025, End Night Games announced Forest 3. And it's going to space, I'm not kidding. The trailer shows a spaceship crash landing on a dangerous alien planet, taking the cannibal horror into sci-fi territory. That is such a bonkers left turn, and I am completely here for it. No release date yet, but the fact that the series is alive and evolving makes going back to the original even more exciting. Start from the beginning. Build your first log cabin. Get dragged into a cave by a mutant. You know the drill. And next up, we have Fallout 4 on survival mode. Okay, hear me out. I know Fallout 4 gets a bad rap sometimes, like the dialogue wheel, the voice protagonist, Preston Garvey, and his never-ending settlements. But survival mode is a completely different game. Bethesda added this mode back in 2016, and it basically turns Fallout 4 into a hardcore survival sim that sits comfortably alongside anything on this list. There's no fast travel. There's no quick saving. You can only save when you sleep, which means finding a bed becomes literally a matter of life and death. You need to eat, drink, manage diseases, and every bullet hurts. The Commonwealth becomes an actual wasteland instead of a theme park. And here's the thing. Bethesda is still patching Fallout 4 this year. They just dropped a December patch that fixes long-standing bugs and improves stability. The game turned 10 years old last year, and they're still updating it. That's insane. But the best part, they haven't touched survival mode. They know better. It's sitting there, waiting for you. Brutal and uncompromising, turning one of Bethesda's most mainstream RPGs into something that feels genuinely tense and dangerous. If you've only played Fallout 4 on normal, you haven't really played Fallout 4. Trust me on this one. Another game that we need to talk about is State of Decay 2. Look, this game is almost a decade old at this point, which in gaming years is basically ancient history. But somehow, Undead Labs just kept feeding it. We're talking about a zombie survival sim that focuses on community management as much as smashing skulls. You're not just one survivor, you're running a whole camp of scared, hungry, squabbling idiots who will absolutely get themselves killed if you don't babysit them properly. The core loop is deceptively simple. You go out, scavenge, come back, build up your base, keep everyone from losing their minds, but then you hit lethal difficulty, and suddenly the game is a completely different animal. Blood plague freaks are everywhere, cars break constantly, and one wrong decision can wipe out a character you've been leveling for 20 hours. And here's the news. Undead Labs already released the game's final and major content update for State of Decay 2. They're finally hanging up the hat and moving fully to State of Decay 3. So if you've been putting this one off, now is genuinely the best time to jump in. A complete, polished, 9 years in the making zombie community sim that still has no real competition. Go in expecting jank, stay for the moments where you genuinely panic over losing a virtual friend. That's the good stuff. And coming in next, we have Sons of the Forest, the direct sequel to The Forest, and honestly, it's bigger, weirder, and more ambitious in every way. Full release hit in 2024 after a long early access period, and End Night has been updating it constantly. We're talking about a massive island with deeper crafting systems, better building mechanics, companions that can actually help you, and the same terrifying AI-driven cannibal behavior that made the original so memorable. The sequel leans harder into the weirdness. The mutants are more grotesque, the caves are more labyrinthine, and the sense of being watched never goes away. And here's the thing that got me. End Night just keeps adding content. The latest updates reworked the electricity system, added weapon upgrades, new blueprints, and improved the story beats. The game had a huge player surge last year, jumping 457% during a summer sale because people realized how much it had improved since launch. If you bounced off the early access version, go back now. It's a completely different experience, and with Forest 3 announced, there's never been a better time to catch up on the series. Next on the list, we have Green Hell. You know, the forest is scary, but Green Hell is exhausting, in the best possible way. This is a hyper-realistic survival sim set in the Amazon jungle, and it wants you to suffer. You don't just manage health and hunger, you manage individual body parts, infections, parasites, venom, sanity, nutrition. If you step on a venomous snake without bandaging the wound properly, you will die. If you eat the wrong mushroom, you will die. If you drink unsafe water, you will die. If you forget to remove leeches before bed, you guessed it. And here's the thing. Green Hell is still getting updates. The storage and transportation update dropped, adding major quality of life improvements. And the VR version is getting a massive PC update in 2026 that brings co-op and all the content from the PSVR 2 version. But the core game is already a brutal masterpiece of survival simulation. It's not for everyone. If you want to feel like a hero, look elsewhere. But if you want to spend 6 hours learning how to not die of a fever in the jungle and feel a genuine sense of accomplishment when you finally figure it out, Green Hell is your game. Just don't get attached to your save file. You will die, many times. Another game we have here is Valheim. Honestly, this game came out of nowhere a few years back and just completely consumed everyone's lives. You're basically a slain Viking dropped into a massive procedural purgatory, and your job is to survive, build, and hunt down epic bosses to prove your worth to Odin. What makes it so freaking good as a single-player experience is the pure atmosphere. It's got this low-poly, almost retro PS1 aesthetic, but the lighting is absolutely gorgeous. Sailing a longship across the ocean while a storm rages is just peak gaming. The building mechanics are deeply satisfying, forcing you to actually think about structural integrity so your roof doesn't just collapse on your head. Sure, people play it in co-op, but playing it solo makes every venture into the swamp or the plains feel incredibly dangerous because you don't have a buddy to distract the deathsquitos, so it's all on you. It's a hell of a lot of fun, and the progression curve is just perfectly tuned. You're constantly getting better gear, building better bases, and exploring further out. Now, it's currently out on PC and Xbox consoles, and reports suggest that it will also be available later this year on PlayStation. So if you're one of the PlayStation fans out there waiting for the release of this game, you better wishlist this game right now. And coming in next, we have Subnautica 2, and I cannot believe I get to say this. It's finally here. After all the drama, the delays, the internal conflicts, the publisher lawsuits, the will it ever actually come out? Subnautica 2 launched in early access, and it's on Game Pass day one. I have been waiting for this game for years, and the early access version is exactly what I hoped for. More Subnautica, but bigger, scarier, and co-op. The premise is classic Unknown Worlds. You crash land on an alien ocean planet, again, but this time something is different. The water is darker, the creatures are more aggressive, and you're not alone. Subnautica 2 introduces 4-player co-op, which completely changes the dynamic. Suddenly, the terror is shared. You and your friends can build bases together, explore wrecks as a team, and scream in unison when a Leviathan decides to make you its lunch. The early access roadmap is ambitious. Unknown Worlds is planning at least 2 years of active development, with new biomes, creatures, vehicles, and story beats rolling out over time. The biomod system is already in the game, letting you customize your character with genetic enhancements that change how you survive. And the Blight encounters, new dynamic events that can spawn anywhere, keep you on your toes even in areas you've explored before. Right now, early access includes the starting biome, a few deeper zones, a handful of vehicles, and the foundation of the story. It's not complete. It's buggy in places, but the DNA is pure Subnautica, that mix of wonder, terror, and I should not be this deep anxiety that made the original a classic. And the fact that you can experience it with friends, that's a game changer. Subnautica 1 was terrifying alone, Subnautica 2 is terrifying together, and somehow that's even better. The game has already surpassed 1 million copies sold before launch and hit over 5 million wishlists on Steam. People are hungry for this, and if the first week of early access is any indication, Unknown Worlds has another masterpiece on their hands. It's not finished, and definitely not perfect. But it's Subnautica, and after all these years, it's so good to be back in the water. Now, next up, we've got Astroneer. We need a little breather from the horror and stress, and Astroneer is exactly that. It's a colorful, low-poly space exploration game where you crash on a planet and just start sucking up the terrain with a vacuum gun. You're tethering oxygen lines from your base, exploring caves, and building massive automated factories. There are no hunger meters or aggressive aliens trying to bite your face off, which is a nice change of pace. Your only real enemy is running out of oxygen or accidentally falling into a ravine you dug yourself. The terrain deformation is so freaking satisfying. You can literally sculpt the planet to your liking, building ramps, bridges, or just digging a hole to the center of the world. Solo play is fantastic because you can just chill out, listen to the amazing synth soundtrack, and build at your own pace. It's relaxing, it's gorgeous, and it's incredibly easy to lose track of time playing it. Coming in next, it's Oxygen Not Included. Cly Entertainment, the people behind Don't Starve, made a colony sim where your cute little duplicants are constantly on the verge of suffocating, starving, drowning, freezing, cooking, or getting crushed by a poorly placed water tank. The systems in this game are insanely deep. You have to manage oxygen pressure, temperature gradients, germ contamination, food spoilage, power grids, plumbing networks, and the emotional stability of individual colonists who will have a mental breakdown if they have to eat mush bars one more time. The physics simulation is the real star. Gases rise and settle based on their density. Liquids flow and stack. Heat spreads through floors and walls. You can build an electrolyzer to split water into hydrogen and oxygen, then pipe the hydrogen into a generator to power the system. And if you do it wrong, your base fills with chlorine and everyone dies. People have put thousands of hours into this game and still discover new interactions. The recent Neutronium Cosmetics Pack DLC and ongoing updates have added even more complexity, though some players complain about bugs after each patch. But honestly, if you're the kind of person who enjoys designing complicated systems and watching them either work perfectly or explode catastrophically, Oxygen Not Included will consume your life. It's slow, it's brutal, and it's one of the most rewarding games I've ever played. And next up, let's talk about Kenshi. Nobody talks about this game enough, and that drives me crazy. Kenshi is ugly. Kenshi is janky. Kenshi's interface feels like it was designed by someone who actively hates you. And it is one of the most addictive, emergent, I can't believe that just happened survival sandboxes ever made. You start as literally nothing. Not even a main character, just some poor schmuck in a brutal, lawless desert world. You can be a trader, a slaver, a bounty hunter, a farmer, or just a starving wanderer who gets their teeth kicked in by bandits. Which will happen. Repeatedly. The whole point is that you're not special. You have to earn everything, and the game does not care if you fail. But that's what makes it so compelling. Lo-Fi Games is still actively developing Kenshi 2, and they recently expanded their team with new members, which means the sequel is actually happening and not stuck in development hell. And the community expects a release sometime in the next year or two. So if you want to see where all that weird, obsessive design philosophy came from, the original Kenshi is waiting for you. Just don't expect it to hold your hand, or be nice to you, or function perfectly. It's a mess, a glorious, unforgettable mess. As a bonus, it's The Long Dark. The Long Dark is the survival game for people who think zombies are overrated. No monsters here. It's just you, the frozen Canadian wilderness, and an endless list of things trying to kill you. Hypothermia, starvation, thirst, wolves, bears, the cold itself. The atmosphere is unmatched. The quiet crunch of snow under your boots, the howl of wind through the trees, the terrifying moment when you hear a wolf bark somewhere close and you haven't found shelter yet. Hinterland has been building this world for nearly a decade, and in March 2026, they finally released the 5th and final episode of the story mode, titled The Light at the End of All Things. The story is complete. After years of waiting, we finally know how Mackenzie's journey ends, and the survival sandbox mode, the real heart of the game, continues to be the gold standard for environmental survival. A free visual enhancement update hit last year, taking advantage of modern hardware to make the already beautiful world even more stunning. The Long Dark has always been about patience, planning, and making peace with solitude. There's no power fantasy here, just you, a frozen lake, and the creeping dread of winter closing in. If you've never played it, the final episode is the perfect excuse to finally dive in. Just bring a warm coat. You're gonna need it.